Ruth Burke by Holly Doherty, conducted on March 15, 1985, at 178 Concord Street, Newton, Mass. This interview is conducted as part of the Public History Project of the West Newton Library. The general subject areas we'll be covering include Newton life from 1920 to 1950. Okay, if we could begin with, how long have you been living here in Newton?
About 40 years.
About 40 years.
In Newton, 50.
Uh-huh.
I lived on a different spot, in Low Falls.
Uh-huh. And you lived here with your family?
Oh, yes.
Were you born here?
No, I wasn't born here. I was born in Boston.
Uh-huh. In what part of Boston?
Well, actually, the center of Boston.
And
Well, we call it South Boston, which is that was the center of it then. And that's 84 years ago. You know. But I moved out here when I was married, and I have two children. But they've gone. I mean, they're not here. I live here alone.
Mm-hmm. And why did you choose to move here when you were married? Is this where your husband was from?
Well, he had come from Waltham, and so he favored this area, and so we did move out here. Well, I never. I was born in South Boston, but my people moved to Dorchester, of course. Well, you know, and there I grew up, and I left there when I married, and I married from Dorchester, but that's the story, and that's I spent my time here.
Mm-hmm. And was your husband working in this area?
My husband, well, he was working out of Boston office. He was working for the veterans.
Oh, I see. And how he commuted from here to Boston?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And how did he go about that?
We had a train down here that came in on tracks which are no longer there.
Oh. So it was really close then?
Pardon?
It was close?
Yeah, right in beyond this house here. It right across the street. You can see it runs parallel with the back of that building down there.
Uh-huh.
Mm. So now you know more about my family. What about what you want to know about the area? Everything, of course, there was nothing built up here as there is now. That entire area back there was just a big field, and we have a barn here, of course. We had a horse, which my son and daughter rode. The sidewalks were dirt, and in wintertime they put in boardwalks and took them up in the summer. And and there were many people who did work in Boston, so they took the train here, which was what they called the ping pong or the shuttle. And I imagine that Jackson House has some pictures of it. Because I have seen them, but I don't know where they've disappeared to. I didn't take them. And this shuttle took quite a few people up to Riverside. You know, Riverside mm-hmm. It was a junction too for the trains, the Boston Albany. And we changed if we were riding it, and waited for the through train. And we had four shuttles a day when I came out here, and everybody. Of course, they were mostly young people, but then when they built when they had the what I'm thinking of the automobile. I mean, the automobile made a big difference in it because most everybody did have, but they didn't drive it to Boston because of the shuttle. And then when they improved the 128, and also then so they didn't have any passengers, and furthermore, a great many of them had driven their own cars, and so would even drive to Riverside and leave their car for their convenience, you know. Let's see. So you go ahead, dear.
So when 128 came in here, that was a big help.
Oh, of course it was, and of course people were able to spread out, and it was more convenient for them rather than going. For instance, did you have difficulty finding this place?
No, very easy. Great direction.
Well, of course, you've probably been used to it. Fine. How many other people are you interviewing?
This is my only one.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, we were each assigned to one.
Well, I hope you're not going to try to write it down verbatim, because I'm O and an R and I
no.
can't remember. So you've asked me a question.
Something just slipped my mind. The density of the neighborhood, were there a lot of people in this neighborhood?
Well, a lot of old-timers, I mean, that had been living here for many years, and this house and the house next door were owned by the same people who lived in this house next door on this end, the Swallows, and they had come from England, and they worked. The husband worked down at the mill. It was a mill that now where there's on Washington Street, which would be Wellesley, there was I think they called it a shoddy mill. I'm not sure. It was a lovely old building, and it's too bad that they pulled it apart, but they wanted to build an office building, which was not too long ago, and they owned this house and the house next door. They built it on their land, you see. And then when I came, the father had gone, and mother, and of course they died younger with older people in those days. They were holding older people longer now because they have an easier time of it, I think. And that house over across the street there, in which was down on what is now the golf course down below here, and it was the Sevenses, and they moved it there, and they had a couple of houses, so, and they had a house across the street, which was again in Wellesley, you see, on that end, and so they sold it to somebody. Not during my time to the Sevens, but that was one of the old families, and the house, the modern house, which is beyond the Swallow House next door, was built and on land that was owned by I think it was the Swallows, and that was the only modern one. And then they built that group of ranch houses there and made a whole street.
How long ago did they build those?
Oh, I think it was in the early 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And because the Swallows, so then the Swallows girls that were left, and there was a son, he died, and the girls were the last, And they went, and so they sold us this house here, and we were tenants at that time. And then, let's see, across the street was built by the early family who came from Wellesley. Of course, the Wellesley people were right across the river. You see the river runs along there.
The Johnson River.
Yeah, and so they would naturally there'd be some Wellesley people who lived in this area. And of course, the automobile made it possible for people to I mean, their roads, they really fixed them up. And the other day I saw them, they had sent down a couple of big sweepers, and I thought, oh, isn't it nice, and made it sweeping up all the sand, you know.
Yeah.
So, most of them, the old ones are gone. I mean, the real old ones. And when Beatrice, the last one, she was in a nursing home, and she sold her house, and that was about the last one, I think, in the older. In the back there's a territory which is on Concord Street, and in a rather new section there are descendants of some of the families, you know, but they're all spread out now. But it was, and of course there wasn't that building there that's been built within the last, it must be 10 years.
So that's pretty neat.
It goes so quickly, and particularly for old people, it's rushing right along. And there was when I came here, there was a big coal yard run by...
Right down there?
Yeah, right down the section there, and it was run by somebody from Wellesley. I still get my oil from him, you know, but he works out of Natick now, and we could go to go to Wellesley if we went. We could go over the trestle, that they call it, and because it's right across the river. Couldn't go. I wouldn't go now because it's pretty well chopped up, you know, and youngsters have, well, they've made holes in it and so forth. Of course, but we were able to, of course, my youngsters did too.
Would you consider this, well, in the past, when all the old families were here, and you said you've been here for at least 40 years, right? So, would you have considered it, say, in the 40s when you got here, a close neighborhood?
A what? A close neighborhood?
Very close.
Oh,
like,
yes, of course.
Everybody knew everybody.
Oh, yes, everybody did, and they had nothing else, dear. We didn't. The movies came into to Wellesley, and I think it was just about when I came here, and that was the only thing that they could go out for, and they didn't have. They weren't driving horses, you know, but the cars and so forth they had. Not everybody had a car, of course, but they all got along very well, just like a community would. Some didn't care for the others, but they all had children, and the children went to that school over there now, which is now a community center and some apartments, and they all went there, and so everybody knew everybody else and what their business was, and just regular small town people. We didn't. There was not too much communication between the different areas, like Newtonville. We did some of our shopping down there sometimes, but we had several markets down here, so that you could have the stuff. And of course, when we came here, we did have a car, and which seems odd, but my husband really needed it after a while because he had to go out on the road, you know, for the veterans. He was working for the department now. Well, it was in town, in Boston. The veterans, there was a veterans building there. I don't know whether they still use it there or not, but anyway, after he could go in by train. But most everybody, the young people actually would get a car, especially after they married. And then because they all move off in different directions, not too many, a great many, most of the young people, I would say now, are from out of someplace else, at Boston, not Brookline, of course. I would think, well, yes, I guess there was one from Brookline, but especially due to the improvements down there, we got some from not Sudbury. Sudbury people were moving out. That was still kind of, in fact, when my son married, he moved to Sudbury and bought a house there, and he had about 13 acres, which he finally, of course he had the horse, and he had the horse because he belonged to the Boy Scouts horse, and which was ridiculous. I think probably the old timers thought we were crazy, but he loved it, and there were people that came from Weston, which is at the end of this line, Weston, and rather than Wellesley, they sort of, and then when the turnpike, of course, went through there, it made a big difference in people's moving about, you know, now that it would go, so you could get off at Framingham or Sudbury, well, Weston, of course, you could go out there. Weston had and still has an entrance, you know. But most of the houses that were here, on the street, are here. There are a couple, as I say, down there where there was a tremendous early house, which was tremendous house, a big house that they had a big family, but then they broke it up into small apartments, and they moved to Wellesley, you see. That was their aim, Low Falls. If we had the mill, you see, which was in Wellesley actually, but they called it Wellesley Lower Falls, which was the sort of a I don't know whether there were some beautiful homes around it on Washington Street, and the doctor was down there, and the churches, and of course we have this lovely church down here.
It is beautiful.
1823. It's very lovely, and it's continued, and that is where we go. I go, and about 20 others, to a friendship group, and it's not under, it's under their jurisdiction, and we have a lot of fun, and it's a place for us to go, and it isn't too far for me, but a couple come in their cars, and which in a way, some of them are 80 years old, and that is really got me bluffed, because they're driving, and I stopped driving when I was 75, well, only because I had a seizure and found myself down the street, but the doctor said, "Oh, you'll never have that again," but I wasn't going to, but I did miss it. But that they used that church, they were very active socially, you know, but a great many of them came from Wellesley, and so that's still there, and they kept that fixed up. They had they built the corner house, which is, they didn't build it, but the corner house was turned towards Washington Street, and was the quarters of the pastor, and it was a lovely old house, and then.
How long ago was that built?
Pardon?
Was that built a while ago?
No, that was built, I imagine, not too long after 1823, when the church was built. But it was lovely, and then the Daughters of American Revolution took it over, and because this church built a priory, not a priory, but a parsonage,
And what did the Daughters of American Revolution do there?
Pardon? There's none there now. No, they now the church sold it, and they practically, I guess, rebuilt it inside now, because now there are offices in there, and they turned it. I don't know if they turned it, but they made the entrance onto Concord Street rather than Washington, and it's so, and having the new bit, they built a new building for the minister, and so that's the only change. They had, that church had a sort of an L like it, but that got burned. And so I don't, and the house that was the parsonage was in grave condition. I mean, I suppose they figured that it'd be cheaper to build a new one and sell the other, which they did, and of course was quickly tenanted, and they fixed it up. It's the yellow house on the corner, on this side. That's so that's the only, and down below there, that was, when I first came here, there was, it was sort of a place to, they had old streetcars in there, because they had a streetcar line down here too, you know, and but then they finally built it up with practically new houses, although there is an old house down there, which is what was that? Doesn't matter, because it's probably in that book anyway. That's the only old house left there. So, of course, some of them, in fact, this house, it was 1888. I think it's 1888, I don't know. I think I put it on here. Did I? Oh, I didn't. Or did I? No. I just found it the other day. I'd forgotten I'd put it away.
Great picture, too, isn't it?
It isn't, and
Looks great.
Victorian.
Mm-hmm.
But now, of course, there's a lot of things to be done on this house, and of course, Stephen kept it up well. while we owned it, but so I can see why the people of the church figured that it would be costly.
Mm-hmm.
Although it was a lovely, lovely old house, and had 3 stories. Where the help lived on the top, And I had been up in up there once, and oh my, they had so many things, piled up in there. But I imagine that. So now the Daughters of American Revolution, as I understand, meet in a small hall office in Wellesley, I think. And they still function, but they don't. They used to be very active down here in the church, but not now. Of course, there are not many young people that are interested to know. I know my daughter-in-law is she would qualify for it, and she said they did ask her. She lives up in West Newbury, and so they're not really interested at all, as far as I can see. The reason I know about it and aware of it, I wouldn't qualify, of course, but I have a friend who was here a couple of weeks ago, and she is, as a matter of fact, she lived in Wellesley. She was a Schofield, and that house is still standing in Wellesley, right over the line, right from Lower Falls. And she said that there weren't too many in it, and that they weren't doing it, and many of them that were in it were old. Of course, she was she's my age, but she's 76, and so I don't know what would become of it. There, I'm rambling. You better ask me a question to get me back.
There's something that I'm interested in is women working in the area. Were there many women that worked in the early years?
Everybody that I know of does, apparently.
Well, how about before, if we could go back to when you first came here?
I went to work because my husband was sick and was out of work, wasn't able to work, so I went to work, and I worked about in an office in town, and of course I could take the ping pong, and most of the in this little village there were families that were left with daughters, and someone, I asked them, one of the old timers at one time, why it was, and it seems that they were either perfectly satisfied with their home living, and they all had homes, of course, and that there weren't too many young men stayed here in the village, so that there was no way for them to meet anybody. And of course, so there were quite a few families of girls left. Like next door, there were 3, and the Sevens, there were a couple, and they were just the nicest people. They would have. It seems too bad, but and then they worked then when their people.
And what type of work? Were they working in the mills?
They worked, no, absolutely not. No, they worked in Boston, and these ladies next door worked in, they worked in City Hall, and that was all right. This friend of mine who just recently died at 90, She lived up on Grove Street. Good person. She worked for an estate. Not Honeywell, but Hubbard, and Hubbard's had a big place up in Weston, and so she worked in, and they had offices there, as the Honeywells did from Wellesley. The firm that I went to work for they were cotton people, cotton and wool, and that was employing mostly ladies.
Mm-hmm. And what year was that you started working?
She was there, I don't know. I forgot,
It's been a while, though.
Yeah, it sure is a long while, dear. Yeah, and those girls that worked, these ladies next door, they worked until, well, as a matter of fact, when they I don't remember whether, yes, they were pensioned, very, very small pension, 3 of them. Oh no, one of them stayed home, and the other 2 worked for the city of Boston, and again, as I say, for the different estates. They had an office in Boston, and these ladies were employed by them and retired by them. And I don't know whether they still or not do have, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised.
See, I'm a little bit surprised to hear you say that so many women were working. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect to hear that.
Oh no, and they wouldn't be in say Wellesley, possibly, but these estates, that family next door, the Swallows, they owned this big area there, and they were in a different class than the people who worked at the mills, and the people that worked at the mills were in an area that was built up for them, sort of up on Grove Street. There's a house there with lots of apartments in it, and the mill people lived in there, you see. So these people were above that group, and the only reason that they went to work was that most of the estates went down after for instance, after the mill people got rid of the mill, for one thing, but when their fathers and mothers died, there was no income, you see, and they had to go to work, and but it was a very elite group, and they were above the class, and they were very conscious of it, and hobnobbed with the people in Wellesley. I mean, they back and forth, and especially the group that went to the St. Mary's, and they had a class, as it were, and they felt that going to work was the work that they did was not beneath them. I mean, to it, and most of them, I know, graduated from Newton Hamilton School here, and then the Newton High School, and the Newton High School was the equivalent of a what would now be a college education, because they were very well educated, and it had a fine reputation, which I don't know whether they still enjoy it or not. But when you graduated from Newton High, you had a place, and most of them did work at that when they had graduated from there, and those that were further back there, when their parents left, they had to go out and make some money to carry on their house and take care of themselves. But they didn't feel it was beneath them because, again, as I say, it was their workings. I was talking to someone the other day who her people lived in the village, and I know now that she has an apartment in Newton, down beyond west, almost into West Newton, and I asked her. I said, I don't know what brought it up. I didn't ask her where she worked, but I understood that she worked in City Hall, and see, of course, that was a very, very nice job, and she felt that she was in. Not into the middle. The mill group, of course, some of them came from Poland, and some, I think, from Ireland, and but they were in their own section, you see, and then they also worked in the hospital. The hospital wasn't that big, but there was work for them, but not for the elite of Lower Falls. I mean, they were in a class by themselves, and they were very proud people, and they had nice homes, but when the older people who did, the fathers, people came from England and worked in the mills in a very good job, I mean, but the young women, of course, were left. The men, the boys, the sons moved out and married other people and left the young people with the home to support, and usually another sister or even a mother, you know, that was they did work, and again went on a little trolley down to Boston. It was quite a group, you know, and it was fun.
What about well, this is going way back to World War II. How did that affect the neighborhood? Was there a great impact?
Well, the sons that were born in here were not here, so, but my son went, and of course, as my generation get in, or my tenant type thing, and owners came, we had children, and I only had the two, but even so, people did, and there were many out of the falls that went to. Now let me see. Now Steve would be too young. My husband was in the First World War, of course. But Steve, my son, was in it, and there were quite a few in Newton, but not right here in this area. There were 2 or 3, and that went when he went, and from Auburndale in that sort of sense, because his chum was in Auburndale, but of course, it's been a gradual leaving of this area, and for instance, his chum is in Denver, and of course, my son when he married, bought this place up in Sudbury, which was not too far, but it was far enough. So there were not many in this area that went to war, but over the Newton, I guess there was a goodly sum, you know.
It's very interesting how Newton is made up of so many different neighborhoods.
Yes.
How did that all come about?
I don't know. I don't know how that evolved. But it is, and they get together in more than they did years ago, and of course, I think that as time went on, and the train and the automobile, and caused more building, you see, and that I think is what caused it, because like in Woburn, see, that's up from, you probably came down Beacon Street, did you?
I did.
Well, that's Woburn up there, and there was considerable building there of people with lots of money, and it was of people of means, and so that and they were, and people spoke of it as Woburn, as distinct from Lower Falls. Not that Lower Falls at one time was all right. I mean, it was, well, I say not all right. What I mean to say is these people thought that they were very good, and of course there were lots of people like the Rice Estate and the early estate and the Sevens Estate, which was in Weston, but it was bordering it, and that, of course, they sold that for the golf course down there. Now, you don't have Alice Calden, do you, on your list? Who else are you? How many others are working?
There's about 15 other people, I believe.
Well, there must be
interviewed.
somebody else for Alice Calden, but she has been here longer than I, and she really could give you information on people before my time, which was perhaps of interest to you. But I don't know if they mentioned the people in this. It's so long since I've read it, but this is just more of the building. See, that's the back of the St. Mary's Church, and so this is Alice Collins' house, and she lives on Grove Street, the next street, and she really can tell, and it was part of the Rice Estate, which was also above which people with estates, which. Well, I don't know, dear. In your the Newton library has a copy of that, dear, and I would think that it would be a great assistance to you to read it, look, and this one here, of course. This is the Newton Centennial, which gives you all the. And there
are a few other things that I'm just wondering about. Just you mentioned earlier about St. Mary's, how they were very socially aware and things.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Down at the church, the people, and I assume you're talking from the time you arrived here up and through.
Oh, sure.
I'm wondering if you've seen any changes in the social conditions or...
Here in the... No, I think that... there isn't a feeling except in individuals I mean, of course it would be individuals, but there's no groups that consider themselves a little above, as far as I know. Of course, I wouldn't feel it because I go to that group, Friendship, and they're from Lower Falls and all around. There's all kinds, and all real worthwhile people. I think that I don't know about Wellesley because I think the DAR represents a class, a group that feel that they're I don't know what you call it, but I don't feel that there's any a distinction. I belong to another group that plays bridge, and most of them are from Wellesley. Another person and myself, and from here, and so I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't know really. They don't make any distinction with me, as I say. I seem to be welcome every place, but I don't go to many places, you know. And I'm old, and the people with whom I associate with for bridge, they are in their. They have grown children, and some of them have grandchildren, and there's only one other that's 80 years old. And so I wouldn't feel as though there was any distinction. Mm-hmm. But most of that group go to St. Mary's. I don't go to St. Mary's. When I go to St. John's, which is Wellesley, you see. Uh-huh. And that's. But I have no feeling that there's any distinction.
What type of religious, political affiliations do the people have? And what kind of background do you think the people here represent?
Well, of course, they were all Episcopal in this area, but down in the village, or not in the village so much as towards Beacon Street down there was a Methodist church, and there were quite a few when I came, but I don't know what they moved to other territories, and Episcopal is the main thing here. A Catholic, I think, is the main in this village now, but I could very well be. Partly Episcopal, and
but before, in the earlier years,
early years it was and there was a feeling, about I mean the most of them had help, and it was mostly Catholics, that from Ireland, and again, as I say, the mill had some English people and Polish, and I think there was some Russian, but and of course I guess there were Irish. I don't know. I didn't know anybody that worked there, but it didn't matter. But there was mostly it's congregational in Wellesley, and of course you're not talking about that. I don't know whether it's a congregational church in Newton. It must be, because in Newton Center there are several churches, and but it was mainly Protestant, and but now I think that there are a goodly number of Catholics in the village here, and in Newton, I guess. I don't know if they have as good a congregation at St. Mary's as they had in the beginning, but that's true of all churches now.
That's very true. What about politically in the early years? You've been here since the early 40s.
Yeah,
what are the political trends that you've seen in the years you've been
well,
here?
As far as I know, Stephen was Democratic and I was Republican. So, but it didn't matter. But
so within households.
Yeah. So most of the Protestants, I think, were Republicans, but I wasn't too active in politics, so I really don't know what the number of either of the political groups would be. That was the only thing. But I felt that most of with whom I contacted, was in contact with, were in the Protestant group, and there were many that I did, because I was quite active with a group down here, even when I began. They were Republicans, and there's a considerable change in the attitudes of both groups now. They're people of the two I know of the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church. They're very, very close. They do things back and forth and go to services and speak at different times, and which is for the good, and that's nice, you know. And this minister down here, who's a very fine person, he's a very hard worker, and it really has us with the friendship group when there are many in each section of Newton. They have a classes, and they have a great interest in City Hall. They do a very good job in having these places for senior citizens and handicapped.
Right.
And I think
have there always been that interest in City Hall, even like from the first when you were here, or is it just with this particular ministry that seems to be?
No, of course I didn't have occasion to I didn't know anybody who worked there. I knew some who worked at in Boston, of course, and but I didn't. I wasn't aware, and I'm not very observing. I mean, I take things as they are, and don't. As a matter of fact, as I say, I haven't looked at this thing for some time, but I really love this village, and the city of Newton is very well run, I think.
If you were in Boston again, when you were looking back at your years here, would you have chosen to move here again when you and your husband were looking for a place to go, back when you left Dorchester?
Would I had what?
Would you have chosen to come to this village again?
Oh.
If you were, take yourself back to when you were in
Oh,
Dorchester
yes,
and you and your
yeah.
husband were looking
Yeah.
for a home.
Yeah.
Would you have chosen this in hindsight, looking back at the years you spent here?
I think I would have. Yeah, I think I would have, and certainly, I think my family still have a feeling for here, although I have a daughter who lives in Needham, and I think she would, and she married a man who lived in West Newton, and in one of the newer houses. I mean, his people owned their own, naturally owned their own. Yes, I would. I like this place, and I know, and I talk to people who live in Lower Falls, and they all are perfectly satisfied with it, and I'd like to end my days here, but of course I'm very lucky to be as I am. Very lucky. And I have 8 grandsons, who 4 of them are now married, and they all drop in, thanks be to God, you know.
That's great.
And so I'm not lonely, and of course my daughter is always there. And the reason that car is in the airway there, the driveway, my daughter was persuaded to buy a car, and she's been traveling around in this Cutlass and loves it, and she didn't want, her husband had wanted her to buy this car because he has one, and she's been putting it off. But finally, they asked her what kind of color car she wanted to put it off. She said, he said, a gray one like mine, and her husband. She said, no, I want a blue one, and they didn't have a blue one. She was tickled. Well, finally they caught up with her, so she got, and so she turned this over to one of her sons. She asked the 3 other of her sons if they wanted it. Nobody wanted it. Isn't that a sign of the time?
That is, boy.
But anyway, this son is in the building business, so he could use it. And so that's what's there. And I told her this morning that I loved seeing it out there. Because it's my daughter, you know. But I don't. I certainly would. I think it's a darling village, and the people are just lovely, and the city is wonderful. I mean, they do as much as they do as well as other cities do, if not better.
And they always have, I assume.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly satisfied with it. And I don't know if my children would move back because they in my case, it's my son and Cleo, we have a place down in Maine, in Portland, on one of the islands, and Stephen bought them years ago, and they bought them. And so if they were to I think that to move out of their houses, I think that they would go into a city further out from Newton and Boston, I think. But anyway, I'm perfectly satisfied.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for taking this time.
Oh, I
and
know
sharing
it,
this
but
with
I
me.
know
I
it.
appreciate
Holly,
it.
dear, what could you get out of it, dear? Could you put it together?
Just for me to hear what you have to say, it means a lot. And
No,
it's just Because that's what history's all about, hearing from other people and learning.
Well, then now, so what do you do? Prepare many estates, and as they died off, and their families were dispersed, you see, but from Boston, they were people moved out here, and like the Rice people, who were in paper, I think, and then of course the cotton mills and so forth. But it was such a small section, and the mill being right over the river there attracted a great many people from Europe, of course. And but there were some lovely homes here, and lots of money, and the estates were just when people who worked at the mills, of course, they too had families, and of course, and the families were educated, and some of them built here. But anyway, dear, well, I hope that you can get something out of it,
sure.
and I feel this way. I'm thankful that it's not going to be the verbatim, because heavens knows, I really rambled for one thing. Well, and then on at 11:30 in Lent especially, and on Sunday the 8:30, and then I get my Easter duty or something like that, or when Theo take me up and I can walk out of the church. I'm so afraid that I'll. Well, anyway, but they have a tremendous program all day long. The Catholic Church. I looked at their. They send me the schedule, and they are in every department of business and social service work especially. And I'm so grateful, and it's such a wondrous thing. And I imagine that they probably have part of one of these stations, particularly I'd say 7, because that's where the Mass comes from. And the other denominations also have their services on Sunday especially. And I'm so proud of are you Catholic?
Yes.
Oh, well, I don't mean that I don't. My mother was a convert, and but I'm praying for them to get together, and it's so good to see all these, and I'm so thrilled at being able to. Imagine being able to sit down here and look at the Mass. It just amazes me, you know.
Yeah.
And this Father McLaughlin, he's in charge of the broadcast, I think, and he is a fine person. And it's just. So I was thinking that possibly that it would be in regard to TV, because they have so many young women on it, you know. Mm-hmm. Do you think from where you look that we're going to have women priests?
Times are changing. I don't know. To be quite honest, I don't know if it will be in my lifetime.
No, I don't think it will be either. And I don't know as I would welcome it now.
Women have made quite a step. I know they have now women Eucharistic ministers and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Even in the church, women can now give out Holy Communion.
Sort of like,
Right.
yeah.
But I think for the church to change its stance,
Yeah. It's a little too fast.
yeah, I think it would be a good thing, because I think that would open up the church to so many more people.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a very important thing that we have to start thinking about, because I think the church, as you said, all denominations, the numbers are just dwindling.
Yeah.
And there's got to be somebody to pick up the trend again. And I think maybe that might help.
The number of communicants in the different churches has some. There's not as many as there were, and people. I don't know what the young people are thinking, what they want, but I'd like to see them get back and in the church. I never was one much to work on in the church like as those of St. Mary do. They're busy as beavers, you know. They're all times of the day. Those that are not working, of course, and most of them are not now. And but at least I went. I observed the rules. And I think of the way I used to get up at 5:30 at Lent and make myself sick and that sort of thing. And but the church is making things easier for them. And I hope it will. But as you say, dear, I don't think it will happen, at least within my time. And I don't know whether I want it, and yet again, down here, when I see those ladies that are studying for it, they're well qualified for it, and I noticed in the church following the Mass, in several places where in the ordinary, I think it is, and that's what I've learned from seeing that. I wouldn't know what ordinary was from the Eucharist or what, but anyway, it says, instead of all men, it says all, you know. Mm-hmm. So perhaps they're leading up to it, dear. But this wonderful gadget here, and this being able to go, I just thank God for it, and must be wonderful for people who are in nursing homes too.
Sure.
You know, I know that many of the priests go to nursing homes though and say masses, but
have you always been a TV buff? Have you always watched your TV, or?
Oh, sure. Well, of course, sure. Yeah, and the first thing that came out, the villagers used to, my friends around here, we all used to go up in the den. We had it up there, and until 12 o'clock. Well, of course, I don't look at it like that now. I don't need it, and but the Channel 2, of course, is terrific with its wonderful. But when I found that I could go to Mass there, and they have a different priest during Lent, of course, each time. And I don't like them all, but I like many of them, you know. Mm-hmm. But it's the fact that here I see them. It is a wonderful gadget, and I have enjoyed it. This is an old thing now. I mean, Stephen brought it home many years ago, and it's not supposed to live longer than 5 years, you know. But anyway, it's a great thing, and I'm very, very grateful to the diocese for making it possible. And I understand that other stations, I don't get cable. No, I'm not interested, truly.
I agree.
Now,
Quite
where do you
honest.
live, Holly?
I live at Boston College right now.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
oh,
I do.
Oh, so